Hey folks, today I'm going to share with you the answers to your questions from the Ag Twitter Lightning Round, where I asked folks on Twitter, hey, I'm interviewing a personal finance coach who happens to farm as well. She managed to save $250,000 by the tender age of 26. And folks, when you hear the full episode, when you hear what Mandyy Thomas, that's Mandy with two Y's, when you hear what Mandyy Thomas is doing for her clients on a holistic level, and this young lady's credentials and her skill set and what she went through, her personal story, it will blow your mind. But I am going to ask of Mandyy these questions that have been provided by the audience directly and post them to Twitter. Top of the thread here. This thread just went viral, by the way, Mandyy. It's just that people are just really fascinated. So the Farm Babe, at the Farm Babe says, super interesting. Would love to learn more. Only time I was ever able to save a ton was when I was living with a boyfriend who paid the mortgage and other major living expenses. She's in the same boat. What do they farm?
Yeah, so my husband, they run the operation with his family. So they have 400 head of commercial cattle. And then also on top of that, then they have a grain farm. So they plant 6,000 acres and kind of barley, canola, peas, lentils, and then some green feed for their cattle as well.
And where are you guys located?
We're just outside of Milestone. So just half hour south of Regina.
Love it. John at the Bird Farmer asks, if she's saved $250,000, what was her income before 26? What was she given to be able to invest? This is a big theme of the thread. Everybody thinks you were given land or inherited. What was she given to be able to invest to save $250,000 from the profits? Too many people say they save, not realizing to save, they have to have something first to be able to save it.
Yeah, so nothing was given to me. This was all from the income so I worked as a power engineer for 4 years. And like I said, I had that scarcity mindset and I was, making kind of big girl money. And so I set a lot of that aside. So what I did was kind of a combination. As soon as I got paid, I set it up so anywhere between like 10 and 18% of my income, I never even seen that paycheck hit my bank account. So that automatically went to investments. Didn't fully know what I was doing for investments yet, but I was like, I'm just going to start doing this. And then on top of that, additionally, per paycheck, I would take money from that. I would also set aside. Anytime I got a tax refund, I never touched it. The second that it hit my bank account, it went into my investments. I did get a bonus each year from work as well. That went in there. So anytime there was any big amount of money that came in from those types of things, because I didn't get anything. It was all simply just from being a power engineer. All of that money directly went towards investments. And I just really lived hugely. Yes, I did have a 6-figure income, but I really, really lived below my means for a lot of aspects in my life. I made really good money, the same money that the guys I was working with, but I spent way less than they did, and I just put it all away. And also, I never, ever touched any of that money, so then it grew as well.
Nice. You might have touched on it in your previous response there, but Ryan Herring, at Herring_Ryan asks, what % of your income should one be putting into the rainy day fund that almost no one has? #lifestyle changes.
So great question. I wish that I had like a perfect answer, but what I'm just going to tell you is, so when I work with my clients, I tell them there's a big difference between an emergency fund and savings buckets. So everyone thinks that they just need an emergency fund, but what's happening is emergency funds they're never growing. They're constantly being dipped into. So what you do need is you need two things. Savings buckets are for those expenses that are going to come up that they aren't monthly. So clothing, gifts, travel, anything like that, vet bills, kids stuff. I have every single client has typically about 8 different savings accounts that they put money into those every single month. Those are what I call like short-term savings. They're going to be using those savings. And then they work on building up a separate emergency fund for actual like loss of income, health struggle, that sort of thing, because we want that emergency fund to not be touched. So that's where it's kind of hard to say a certain percentage, because every other financial person basically just kind of operates on just have an emergency fund, but everyone's dipping into it. So what I would say is, start to figure out what those savings buckets are. And I would love to, I have a spreadsheet that we can link in the show notes that anyone can download that they want that helps walk them through actually figuring out what they should put into those for their lifestyle. And then what you would want to do for the emergency fund is it's going to take you years to build that up. Everyone makes it seem like it should take you 3 months and you should have an emergency fund. No, most people don't have enough cash flow for that. So really seeing an emergency fund this is probably going to take you, for most people, 3+ years to build up, 3 months worth of living expenses. So that's really important to keep that in mind. So having those short-term savings buckets, and then yes, open up an emergency fund, even if you just start putting a small amount into it, but know that that's going to take you years to be able to achieve that. So it doesn't feel like a failure when it's taking a while to get there.
Nice. Mike Stott at Black Pearl 152. Does she own stocks within a TFSA? Hashtag buy deer.
Yes, so I do have certain stocks. So I have my RSP and my tax-free. That's what I do my investing inside of. And I have some of them that are, a lot of them in like low-cost index funds through my one side of my portfolio. And then the other side of my portfolio that's much smaller because it's like more, I treat it as more of like my play money as I'm figuring out. But yes, I do hold stocks within there as well. I just don't hold American stocks. I hold those inside of my RSP. I make sure that they're Canadian stocks that I'm holding inside of my tax-free.
Sweet. Danny Ottenbright from at O2Farms _ asks, how does one slow down the rate money leaves the farm and increases the rate money comes into the farm? Also, what's some good basics for managing cash flow?
We could do an entire episode on that one topic. There's so many aspects to it. But one of the things I would say is you need to make sure that you're doing a lot of like actual strategic planning. Because if you're just trying to handle like the day-to-day as things are coming, you're constantly going to feel behind. That's the same with your personal finances. So a big thing I would say is really like all of the people sitting down, going through the money and really just kind of seeing like when throughout the year are those the times when you have more cash flow coming in, when you're typically kind of selling different things, and then really seeing, okay, all the payments and different things like that. And just making sure that you got to be pretty strategic about it. You cannot keep this all in your head. It has to be down on paper, whether that's putting it on, a Google Doc or a spreadsheet, but you need to get it out of your head. And you also need everyone else to see it as well. Because even in, let's say, if we're just talking about personal finances, even between a relationship, both people really need to see, the aspects of what's going on there. It's the same with the farming operation. So people can be making decisions, but have no idea that maybe you don't even have the cash flow for that. So that's so important. You just have to be really taking a lot of time to sit down, to go through the numbers, and not just from a bookkeeping standpoint. That's a really big difference. If you're doing things for bookkeeping, that's for your tax purposes. That's important for CRA. But what you really need to be doing is cash flow management. You really need to be looking ahead 3 and 6 months ahead. No, you can't plan everything and everything isn't perfect, but if you can tell that you're probably going to be in a pretty tight spot, it's easier to make decisions now to help and try and avoid that.
Danny, you need to hire Mandyy Thomas. Let's be real. Corey Peters, I don't know if this is going to be in your wheelhouse, but it turned into a really big discussion amongst the farmers on Twitter. But Corey Peters asked, would be curious on her thoughts on leasing equipment versus purchasing and what works best on an average farm budget per tax year. I know every situation is different, just seems to come up in topic a lot more last couple of years with low interest rates. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that's going to be so dependent on your specific situation. I'll say for personal, when we're not talking about farming, I hate leasing. For the most part, for most businesses, I really don't like leasing. I think that the pros don't outweigh the cons. Farming, very different. I wish that I could give an awesome, sweet little answer, but it's going to be so dependent on your specific situation. Because you also have to take into account, typically leasing is a lot higher cost, but you have to take into account the potential downtime that you don't have and different things like that. So, and peace of mind, because you're running newer machinery. So there's a lot of things to take into account, not just the financial aspect, but how you feel kind of emotionally as well too.
Whew, lots to consider. At Daryl Francoux, my good buddy Daryl Francoux asks a great question. What is the worst purchase you have ever made?
Ooh, that's a good question. I will say it's not the actual purchase itself. It's why I made the purchase. So I used to show horses at a high level, and I'm getting back into that. And there was this really beautiful showmanship jacket. It was $2,400 is what I paid for it. And it wasn't, I cash flowed it. It didn't go on debt, but it was really that I was coming from it because I was more in a pissed off state of mind in my life. Like I was kind of really upset about stuff and I didn't know how to voice my opinion. So instead I went, you know what? I went through a lot of crappy things, so I'm going to buy this and I deserve it. And I love the jacket. I ended up selling it for the exact same I paid for it, so I didn't lose. But it was learning that me being really emotional and buying it from the wrong place.
Interesting. Okay, Norman Rasmussen asks, would be interested to know if she moved out of home immediately, stayed at home, etc. Myself, buying a house straight out of high school turned out to be a great investment, tougher to do now than in 2000.
Yeah, so when I very first finished high school, I started in the oil field as a pipeline laborer, so I did that for a year, and I ended up having really bad chest pains, and so I went to the hospital. We couldn't figure out what it was, and it lasted for probably about a month straight, so I ended up leaving that job. I moved home, so I would have been about 19 at that time. I was at home for 8 months, just trying to get healthier because this pain was constant in my chest, and I was really worried, and I was doing an extremely physical job. So I quit doing that. I moved home. I just helped my dad out for the spring and the summer with getting the crop in and that sort of thing. Then I went to school as a power engineer for 2 years. I didn't live at home. And then when I was working as a power engineer at that time, I basically lived in two places because I worked away from home. So I lived with my husband. We were just dating at that time. I lived with him and his family for about 3 years. And then, so I lived with them about half the time. And then when I was working the other half, I rented in Weyburn. So kind of that combination. And then when we got married, we bought a house. And then we lived on our own. So I will say I am a fan of anyone who can live at home for a little bit longer. I have no shame in that, no embarrassment at all. But I will say it's significantly different buying a house now than it ever has been. And that if you don't have, people helping you out, it can be a lot more difficult. We didn't have someone help us out, but I'm just saying, so when it feels tough, not to feel bad, because it takes so much more work to be able to buy a house now than it ever did before.
Indeed. Kyle at Yuhu26. What's your thoughts on economy of scale and how timing of growth can have implications?
Ooh, that's a pretty loaded question. That's something I wish I could dive into, but there's so many variables that it would be hard to even touch that.
You got to buy the online course, Kyle. Get real here. Chris Downey at First Gen Farmer. What era did she manage to scrape up $250K, and how did she start farming with $1 million? I'm sure to end up with $250K. The old farming adages start with $1 million and end up with nothing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So that was really, everything just came from my power engineering career. And then my husband, his family has farmed forever. And so I married my husband, and he's farmed, and they have cattle. So that's really where that aspect came in. So I don't personally farm. My husband does. And then I just help out these small amounts that I can, because my business is full time and I'm scaling it as well. So I don't want to take away. My husband's the one who is doing all of the work there. I'm really just helping out more so with meals and that sort of thing. But yeah.
Gunter Jochum at GM JOCHUM. How's it going, buddy? Why did she only save $250K? What prevented her from hitting a cool $1 million? Like, were you slacking? Mandy?
I definitely needed to have worked as a power engineer for longer. I'll say that. And I would have needed to have the knowledge I have now back then. Would have made a big difference too.
Yeah. Dan Jones at Jones6807 said, I'm married, but I'm sure someone would love to know if she's single. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would love to combine romance with somebody that can manage their money, but she's already
very married.
That she's
very married.
Very married. Yeah. Kendall Gee at Kendall Gias. This is a good one. What personal finance myths does she see as costing people the most?
One of the big things is when it comes to setting money aside for how we're managing our money on a day-to-day basis. One of the big things is not understanding the difference between saving and investing, really. Like everyone says, you need to save this much. I really don't think so. I think what we need to do is we need to have these savings buckets where we're saving all that money that is basically going to be used in the next, 3 months to 12 months. And then understanding that, because what we hear conventionally is you need to set aside 10% of your income. You need to save 10% of your income. That is so not true. It has to actually be way, way more than that, because we need to distinguish the difference between saving and investing. Saving, you're never going to get ahead of inflation, and your money is never going to grow. So you need to really be comfortable. Okay, you have your savings buckets. That's for saving. You need to be investing at least 10%. And it really depends on what your income is, because if your income's pretty low, you would need to be investing even more than that. So really just honestly understanding the difference in the terminology and what that actually means for what you're doing behind the scenes. So investing, like I had said before, I invested 10 to 18% plus anytime I had that extra money coming in. And I was saving on top of that as well.
And hire a coach.
Absolutely.
This is what you said is a nice segue to John at Iron Healer. Question or comment. I always invested the money back into myself somehow. That's technically saving, no?
So you can look at it kind of two different ways. So I do think that investing in yourself is one of the amazing ways to invest, but you have to also make sure that you have your money growing as well. So even if it's just a small amount, I would urge you to just even start investing like outside, like actual investing, like retirement, long-term investments. Even just start with small amounts there, but making it the goal that when you're investing in yourself, that you're able to get an ROI that is either making more money or you're able to, really leverage that as well. So for example, there was a time when I went back to school, I did not have an income coming in. I will also say that I did not have any income coming in. And then once I started my business, I also did not take a job anywhere else. So I was living off of savings, but I knew that ultimately it was going to really get me ahead. So I was investing in myself at that time, not in my investments, only simply in me to learn how to actually run a business, how to actually get clients. But I made sure that it was a priority, that I didn't keep that life, that I only focused on that I eventually got to the point where, yes, I'm still investing in myself in the business, but also I'm investing in my retirement and my long-term investments again. So really just, it needs to be kind of that fine balance. So there's a difference. When you're in like a startup, you really probably aren't able to invest much outside. You really solely are investing in yourself and in your business, and that's okay. But understanding there has to be a point where you're starting to make more profit and you're able to invest outside as well.
Awesome. Curtis Hoffman at freedom_speech1 comments, sounds like a good interview. Saving that much is impressive. Wondering what age you started working. Did you get an education? So we've already covered all those facts. We won't go there again, but he did make some comments. $250K over 8 years is just over $31K saved per year. That's more than I made per year. That's more than I made per year as a first, second, and third welder. I never missed a day of work in 3 years. Puts in perspective. Scott Keller at S. Keller Farms asks, what's your favorite book and why is it The Wealthy Barber?
I did absolutely love that book. That was a really, really great one. And I just loved his perspective. So that was a great book. I'm going to say two other books that I really like too. I had read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I think when I was about 16 or 17. And for me, I had lived a lifestyle where I'd only seen, how my parents were growing up. And that just made me feel like there was so many other possibilities. And I already was pretty entrepreneurial starting those first two businesses, but I didn't know anything else outside of that. And it made me just go, you know what? I don't know what else I could do as an entrepreneur, but I know I want to be one day. And I want to get into rental properties. I haven't yet. So really love that book. That really changed everything for me. And The Compound Effect. I think it's by Darren Hardy. I hope I didn't say his name wrong. But those two also, I love those books as well.
Do you have a book list of the 65 plus books or your top 5 books or something that you share with clients?
I'm careful actually now about sharing book lists, because what I find is a lot of times people are doing really passive learning. They feel really motivated,
right,
but they read the entire book really fast and they didn't do anything. So I actually called that out on my podcast saying, how many books are you reading and how many podcasts are you listening to, but not actually doing anything? So I'll say, I'd rather actually have you doing stuff than reading a book. So it's kind of funny. My perspective's really changed. I'm careful about giving out book recommendations now.
Guilty as charged. Farmer J at Jason T. Kachuk. Why would you be saving cash when real inflation rates are higher than any cash-based investments I've seen? I made $1 million by 25, flatlined the next decade or so.
Yeah, so that wasn't 250 just saved. There was a portion of that was saved, and then quite a bit of it was invested as well. I did carry a bigger amount that was in savings versus what a lot of other people would have did. But I was also getting really sick, and I just had a feeling I was going to, my doctor told me 2 years before I left my job that I would need to. So I also kept some that was more liquid because I didn't know what that would look like. But yeah, super important to be investing, but things can also, things can change there as well. Things can really dip. So really taking that long-term strategy and being able to not be emotional and pull out at the worst possible time. That's one of the things I think is really important to bring up is when I came out into the workforce in 2008 and I started as a pipeline laborer. So I would have been 18. A lot of the guys that I was working with were 40, 45 years old-ish. All I kept hearing from them was about everything had dropped. Like it wasn't a good time in the world. We were in a recession then. And all I kept hearing was how they lost like 60% of their money. And from someone who already felt pretty scarce, that really freaked me out. But I didn't understand at that time that they didn't lose unless they pulled the money out. And that's kind of what I've seen is when things really get down, a lot of people pulling their money out at the worst possible times and really realizing those losses. The other thing is really spending a lot of time learning about investments. My investment strategy is so different than it used to be. So that's another big thing is just that has been a big part of my journey as well, is really learning in depth about investing so I could try and get the best returns basically that I could.
Right. So Jason Hildebrand at Jason_Hildo was asking, my question would be is how those savings have been invested early. How could those savings have been invested earlier to yield potential equity dividends today? But you've already covered that you had some of it invested. Is that fair? That is fair. Yeah. Okay. This is a indicative of a set of beliefs here. And this particular comment got 40 likes. So Shulky Corn said or asks, how much land was given to her? But you don't have to answer that because the answer is none. I didn't have any that was given to me. No. Yeah, perfect. That's all you need to say. But that's an interesting reflection of what you naturally assume. Mark August Guy at Mark August Guy. Why in the world did she save 250 rather than using it as a downstroke on something leveraged? Why don't you? Yeah, I guess he's saying that you should have maybe invested it or leveraged, like took a loan on something, but. Yeah, definitely had it in investments, and I would have loved to have used it on something else. But at the time, it was the knowledge that I had, and just being, there wasn't as many opportunities to understand about investing back then because I actually really wanted to get into real estate when I was in my kind of early to mid 20s. But back then, there was not the information there was now. I actually took a year-long program about it, but it was American-based, and I felt like the information was so completely different being a Canadian. So I was looking for opportunities, but back then I just had a hard time finding them because the internet is not what it is now. Final question. You've done amazing. You've answered a bunch of hard questions very well. You're a professional. Rizzo asks, are you up for adopting an older child? I will pass on that. She's good. She's good. She's got lots on her plate. I have horses, and they take enough of my money. I love my horses, and they are like children. Look, she has clients, of which you can become one. How would people find you online? How would people connect with you? How would people become a client of yours? Yeah, so the best place is to reach out to me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. So it's at Intentionally Wealthy Co. And you can also listen to me on the podcast to really, understand, get a more of a feel for how I work with clients, my thought process. So that's Intentionally Wealthy. And if you want to talk with me, what I always do is I always make sure, are we actually a good fit to work together? Because there's some people that I know based on their situation, they're not a good fit. And I'll just be straight up honest. So then neither of us waste our time. So in that case, what I do is I have clients fill out, or potential clients fill out an application form that gives me more information so I can understand more about your situation. And then you get booked in for a call. It doesn't cost to talk with me. And then we have a call, and then we can just go deeper on that. And then I can tell you, do I think, we're a good fit to work together? And what would that specifically look like? Would it be one-on-one coaching, or would it be my group program? Or if there's something different. Look, I'm very coachable, Mandy. Let's be real. And some of you are not that coachable. I am very coachable, but no, I love the whole coaching thing. as you know, as a listener of the show, my brother and I have just benefited so much from being around people that are vastly superior to us and are in their area of expertise. And for anyone who gets the benefit of listening to this full show, at the beginning, you'll hear everything that Mandy's accomplished at. And on her bio, you can go on to mandythomas.com with 2 Y's and read more about her story there. But it's absolutely incredible to connect with you. And I love what you do. I think it's incredibly valuable. And it's something we should all be, we touched on our other portion of our interview more about beliefs that we get as young people. And I think one of the most powerful pieces here is if you can help people overcome their beliefs about money and address those, and we can get this down to our children, something that is not taught in school. Your life trajectory is vastly different depending on how you see the world and how you bring up your kids and how you were brought up. So today, like you say, we have a bold new era where coaching is a thing, and people like yourself are helping others succeed. And I'm just incredibly excited by what you're doing. I'm very honored to have you on the show. So thanks for coming on the show, Mandy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. And I would just love to leave just a couple of final words, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Because based on the questions that people asked on Twitter, which were awesome, there's a couple of podcast episodes I'd love for you to listen to give you more context than what we could go into today. And so it's episode 2 of my podcast. I literally break down like 14 steps of how I save that much money, so I can be a lot more specific in that one. Episode 3 talks about savings buckets. That's a huge thing. That's an absolute game changer for my clients. That's an amazing one. And then because we talked about like the family money paradigm, I'd love for you to hear more about that, because we only got to, we can only have so much time to cover it. But on my podcast, that is episode number 23. That goes a lot more in depth about the family money paradigm, which I think is every single person really needs to dive into that. So those are just 3 episodes. If you would love to dive into, you can check those out specifically.
Awesome. I'm going to put those links on the YouTube that I'm going to share with everyone that was kind enough to ask some great questions. I loved it. It's great interaction. And I think this kind of coaching is needed in agriculture. Very welcome. So say hi to your husband for me. I appreciate you coming on this show. And thanks so much. I'm really looking forward to this, publishing of this episode. And I think we might have to talk later, because I think I like to be coached too. So obviously there's lots of areas I could still improve on. So thanks for coming on the show, Manny. It's awesome to have you.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.